Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. I'm joined now by Democratic analyst Betsy Sweet and Republican Phil Harriman. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
I want to start with some good news in terms of the state's revenue forecast. Projections show the state could have $223 million more this year and nearly $1 billion more in revenue by fiscal year 2027. And Republicans are now proposing some immediate relief for taxpayers totaling $400 million. Phil, I want to start with you. Is this actually doable?
Well, it is. The Democrats passed a majority budget because they wanted to make sure that their baseline spending was in place. Now this means, particularly with this news that you brought to us this morning, over $1 billion of new revenue certainly calls for an opportunity to get some of that money back into Mainers' checkbooks so they can deal with their energy costs, their food prices, and other things that have been putting a lot of pressure on families in Maine.
Betsy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the devil's in the details, right? We want to make sure that any relief goes to the right people, not the people at the high end who don't need it, but the people who are really struggling. I also think we have to look at our woefully underfunded services, particularly when we look at things like child abuse and neglect, things that we know are really underfunded, and that has to be considered helpful investment for taxpayers as well.
And speaking of child abuse and neglect, I want to shift gears to a new disturbing report out this week showing Maine has the highest rates for child maltreatment in the nation. The Kids Count report is done annually by Maine Children's Alliance and the Annie E. Casey Foundation. It evaluates issues affecting kids like abuse, poverty, as well as mental health. And Betsy, it's an ongoing issue that's really plagued the Mills administration, has plagued lawmakers. But is it a surprise?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think if you look carefully at the report, what it shows really is the places where it's worse is in our rural areas. And that, again, is because we have shrunk our services so much in terms of mental health prevention, services, emergency mobile crisis, things that can actually provide supports to families that need help. And it's so much shrunk in rural areas because the providers have had to shrink back to where the geographical area they can count. So this is a perfect, it's horrible, it's, and we can do something about it. That's a problem. We know what to do. It just takes resources combined with what we were just talking about. I'm hopeful that we might be able to actually make some progress. Horrible. It's and we can do something about it. That's a problem. We know what to do. It just takes resources combined with what we were just talking about. I'm hopeful that we might be able to actually make some progress.
Right. But it's been years and there hasn't been progress.
Yeah, we've had this conversation going back to the days when I was in the Maine Senate working with Betsy. This is not a new conversation. It's very disappointing, particularly when you consider even 10 years ago what we were spending in the state budget to today. It's billions more, and we can't put these children as the #1 priority. We can do better than this.
Yeah. There was more debate about guns this week, specifically when it comes to school safety and active shooters. Among the proposals that came up at the State House was a bill to allow teachers to be armed in schools. There were obviously other proposals. Phil, does this one go too far?
I don't think it does, and here's why. We basically put a sign out in front of schools that say we're a gun-free zone, so anyone who's got that propensity to behave this way knows they're walking into an unarmed environment. If someone is properly trained, just like we let other citizens in Maine carry a weapon, why shouldn't someone who's got the training in a school who could prevent these things from turning into carnage?
Well, why? It's because accidental deaths, more guns creates more violence. This is not the answer. Teachers opposed it, superintendents opposed it, principals opposed it. Who of us wants to know that their second grade teacher has a gun in their desk or in their pocket or where they have it? You know, this is if Johnny throws a rock at Phil on the playground, the answer is to not give Phil a rock to throw him back. We have got to look at different methods of security and to make sure, but arming teachers and putting more guns in our school is the least safe and the worst idea I've heard in a really long time, and teachers think so too.
Yeah. Another big topic in schools right now is book bans. I want to check out this headline in the Lakes Region Weekly. It reads, book challenges in Windham fuel harassment at school. LGBTQ+ students say. It says that attempts to ban 8 books in RSU 14 have actually led to more bullying. Betsy, this really shouldn't come as a surprise here, but what does this say about the efforts going on in school districts all across the state?
You know, it's somewhat perplexing, you know, to this whole idea, and we see it in Maine and we see it across the country, that somehow limiting people's access to information is going to make us better. And, you know, we've had, just regarding, you know, no child has ever picked up a book and killed another child. Or no adult has picked up a book and killed another child. We want to ban books, but we can't ban handguns, we can't ban assault rifles. You know, it's just, I don't know what, I think this is a political ploy to look at who are the least, who are the most marginalized people that we can go after and get some fear, raised, and we're doing that. Meanwhile, the fallout on young people in schools is terrible. So young people who have ideas, who aren't tolerant, who don't appreciate the diversity, feel empowered to act on those feelings much more so than they ever have.
It just seems to me that we have obscenity laws in the state of Maine. The Secretary of State led the charge to decide what you could have on a vanity license plate because it was considered obscene. Can't we have that same conversation about some of the books? Maybe not ban the books, but maybe there's content within that book that maybe is inappropriate for the age of the student who's reading it.
But that's what librarians are doing now. I mean, schools do this. I mean, the thought that, this notion that somehow our schools are full of, obscene pornographic material and we're just willy-nilly letting kids in 2nd and 3rd grade read it, that's absurd. It's a political ploy, and kids are the target.
The conversation will definitely continue.
Yes.
A big headline this week, former Vice President Mike Pence testifying before a federal grand jury on President Donald Trump and his alleged role in January 6th. The big question here, did Trump break the law in his efforts to overturn the 2020 election? Phil, this has obviously been, it is a big deal, the vice president going on the record here. What will this mean for Trump's chances, especially as you have Pence kind of hinting at a run of his own?
Well, say what you will about Mike Pence's politics, you can tell this is very, very important to him, the rule of law, the Constitution, following the responsibilities that he has as a citizen and as a former vice president. My understanding is that he spent a lot of time preparing for this, and his grand jury testimony lasted several hours. So yeah, this is going to be pivotal, I think, in this case. And
former President Trump is actually in New Hampshire this week, rallying supporters there, showing he's really hitting the ground running. But I want to go bigger picture. What does this really mean for the presidential race? You had Biden formally announce, you have Trump, you have possibly DeSantis. What does this mean bigger picture, Betsy?
I think that the fact that Trump remains the front runner in the Republican Party no matter what is very troubling for Republicans. And I think on both sides, I think that this idea that this has already been decided, that this is going to be a Biden-Trump repeat, by the powers that be, and there are other candidates who are entering, but they're dismissed. We're not supposed to pay attention to them. And I think that is a huge shame that if we look at these candidates and say, are these the best, both of them, are they the best that we have to do in these challenging times? And I think we're seeing less transparency, less ability for people to affect our primaries and who's going to be the candidates than ever before. And this is not the right time for that.
I think it's interesting that even people on the progressive/liberal side of the political agenda see what's happened with Trump and this indictment in New York and feel like this is not, justice the way it's supposed to be. And I think that fuels, Zach, the reason you see some of the enthusiasm for him today, the fundraising that he's been able to accomplish. We're a year and a half away from the election. A lot is going to change in that time frame. And as I've said before, Trump may be able to secure the Republican nomination. I don't know how he gets the hearts and minds of independents and moderate Democrats to cross over for him.
But right now, he's definitely rallied up his base.
Yes.
Yeah, he absolutely has.
Shifting gears, Maine's Independent Senator Angus King is pushing a new effort to create a code of conduct for the Supreme Court. This, of course, comes after Justice Clarence Thomas got some heat recently for not disclosing he was taking luxury trips thanks to a billionaire Republican donor. Senator King's proposed legislation would basically make it so that justices come up with a code of conduct that they would follow. Here's what he had to say about it.
We're trying to create something that will help to restore the confidence of the public in the Supreme Court, which is critically important to the functioning of our entire federal system.
So, Betsy, is this realistic?
I think it's incredibly sad that we need to do this. I mean, you think of the Supreme Court as the highest justices, the people with the most integrity. If you think back over history, that has been the body that everyone trusts. And we see now that we have the Americans have the lowest trust ever in the Supreme Court. So I think this is trying to bring back some of that trust, as Senator King said. I don't think it'll pass. I don't think it's going to pass. And again, I'm just so saddened that that we aren't immediately saying when someone has this kind of compromise in their background and what they've been doing, that we don't say, oh, whoa, 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 you don't belong on the highest court in the land. That we just say, okay, well, maybe we'll look into it. I hope it works, but I'm sad that we're there.
I see it a little differently. The Supreme Court is an equal branch of government. They are not going to be constitutionally impacted by this bill that Senator King has proposed. That they have to run their own house, so to speak, and clearly this is a message they're hearing, but Congress is not going to pass a bill that the president's going to sign that's going to tell the Supreme Court to do anything.
Yeah, we'll see. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up this headline. You probably forgot about it by now, but Fox News canned Tucker Carlson this week, the same day CNN fires Don Lemons. Bit of a coincidence there. There's still a lot we don't know about why Carlson was fired, but what message does this send, Phil?
Well, it's very clear that the corporate media is in charge of what goes on in the airwaves, and for whatever reason, they decided that Carlson's message was no longer worthy of their airwaves. I think it's interesting, Zach, that within 24 hours of his dismissal, he put out a very brief clip, 3 minutes long, roughly. He got 60 million impressions, 20 million views. Tells you he's got a connection to the American public that's not going to go away.
Whether he has the Fox News platform or not.
Right.
Yeah, no, he totally has a connection. And I mean, it is no coincidence that it came after the settlement with Dominion and, all those things. Like, so, I'm saying bye-bye,
That was good news.
It was some good news for my day. But one of the things that's fascinating is that how little, like on the Dominion suit, that Fox reported on it. So people who watch Fox News, like some people in my family, as their only news source, didn't even know about the settlement and didn't know that what might have led to this. It was like this big surprise. And it's like, no, there's a lot more we don't know. And just want to say good luck. Have a good time.
All right, maybe he'll be hanging out in Maine.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Winners, losers, Betsy, I'll start with you.
My winners of the week was this week, there were over 150 young people who came to the State House to just be involved in the process, to learn about the process, to talk to legislators about things they care about. And I was thrilled to see those people there. So they are all my winners. They took a lot of time out of their day, and the organizers were awesome. So it was Maine Youth Action Day, and it was awesome. The losers to me are the Republican legislators in the Montana legislature who have barred the transgender representative from being on the floor of the Montana House. I don't know what we're so afraid of, but this is not how democracy works.
Phil?
Yeah. My loser of the week is the Federal Housing Finance Authority, who decided that people who save money, put down payments, have good credit, are going to pay more in fees than people who have lower credit scores. It's not the right message. And the winner this week for me is the number of high school seniors who are now hearing from the colleges that they've applied to and getting ready for the next phase of their life. Good for them.
All right, Betsy, Phil, thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next time here on Political Brew. The Morning Report is back right after this.